Welcome to the second town hall meeting. My name is Andrea Ballinger. I am the Associate Vice President and Chief Technology Officer here for ISU. But most importantly, I actually have the honor of serving as the chairperson for the LEAP steering team. So we're going to talk about the governance in a little bit. But today's goal is for us to bring you up to speed on everything that we have been working on for the past 18 months. A lot of the information that we're sending out in our communications talk about the steps, but we wanted to actually do a concentrated and concerted effort to keep you on this flight. We also want to make sure that we remind you of some of the goals that we have for this approach, and it's listed here, on being very transparent with what we're doing, and we're going to share with you how you can keep yourself up to date, but how, more importantly, how you can get involved and help us building the best enterprise architecture we can. We are being inclusive, and we mean it. If you look at the numbers here, we have already spoken with 744. This is a non-duplicative number of folks on campus about their requirements, about their desires, about their pain points, and what do they envision for this effort that we're working on. And also formality. Why formality? Once you see what this project is all about, or this initiative is all about, you will see that it's very easy for us to get derailed. So how do we create this environment in a way that really is what we're expecting at the end? That we are going to solve some of the problems that we already know we have, but more importantly, create an environment that is flexible enough for us to respond to the needs that we cannot even foresee. I was present. I was very honored to be in Billy Lim's class this week, and one of the questions the students were asking about disruption of technology or what's in the future. And I was sitting there thinking, can we plan for the next 5 or 10 years? And the answer is no, but we can plan for agility and flexibility so that we can respond to something that's coming in 5 to 10 years from now. Guiding principles of this initiative are very clear. These are endorsed by our vice presidents, and we on the steering team really take it seriously. Streamlining processes. The way that we grew up as an institution, and especially on the technology side, has been very organic. It has been very decentralized, solving individual problems. If you think about 30 or 35 years ago, and there are many in the audience that were not alive at that time, I can recognize the faces, but I was. And 35 years ago, the technologies available to us were very different. But we still have a lot of the infrastructure and systems that were created back then. Holistic information integration with the constituents. This is the piece where we are talking about the transparency and the inclusiveness of having you join us. So I mentioned 744 people that we already have spoken to, but there will be a lot more. And this is an opportunity for you to be spoken to as well, and also figured out where is the point, the best point for you to be engaged in this project. Integrated knowledge. This is one of the paramount problems that we want to answer with this effort, which is really getting this information, all of the data that we collect and all of the data that we wish we could collect, and compare that data with the outside data that might be helpful to us. So how do we create this enterprise data warehouse, or this environment where it's rich with information that makes sense to us, so we can all pull from, depending on our roles, with the proper security, but access and make ISU everything that it wants to be. In a nutshell, if you have not heard about the Leap Forward initiative, in a nutshell is this. If you look on the top left of this graph, we have very siloed systems, and we have very siloed processes, and many of them require a lot of hands to be touching it. And sometimes, in several instances, touching the same part over and over again, because we do not have integrated systems. The idea with this initiative is really to create a modern, very flexible environment where you don't have those problems. It's very integrated. You put data in one place, it flows to the next place. So when you want to fix something, or a student wants to change the address or their major or their parents' home address, you can go to one place only, and it actually migrates into the entire system that we have. And it is integrated, so a lot of the hands that it takes today for us to connect these things together won't be needed as much, right? Nutshell. Why are we calling it an initiative and not a project? Some folks are calling it a project. A project that has a specific purpose and a particular timeline. This initiative touches every aspect of the student life cycle. So it's a lot larger than what a project is. So if you can look at this, we started back in December 2011 when we kicked off this initiative, and we're not planning to actually get it done until the day that we're going to celebrate, and we're going to have fireworks, if I can get the police department to allow me to do that. Dr. Deeds, can I start lobbying now? Thank you. when we will actually turn off the mainframe and decommission those systems that we had. So I can't wait for that, so that would be the signal that we have succeeded on our effort. You do know that the mainframe does not sit on campus anymore, but is still operating and is still taking care of all of our student systems. So when you look at the number of projects, each one of those dots and efforts is a project, you understand why this is such a large effort. And today we're going to brief you on several of those projects and where we're at, what we have accomplished so far, and we have great accomplishments. In terms of the initiative governance, you will not be surprised that the executive sponsors of this effort are the vice presidents. Now, I know that Dr. Dietz is here. I don't see if we have the other vice presidents in person here, but I appreciate you coming. Dr. Evers, Dr. Lazelle, and Aaron Manet are also part of that group. What that means is that the steering team, which is right below, and I'm going to talk about them in a second, report to, and we receive the guidance for this project from them. They endorse what we're doing, or correct if we're not going the right way. So far, Dr. Dietz, is it fair to say that we're doing the right things? All right, thank you. In terms of the steering team, I would like for the steering team members, and there are many of them here today, to stand up for a second and be recognized. But I want to make sure that you know that every division is represented, and these are very influential, very high-level individuals helping us and helping you create the vision that we are articulating here. So if you don't mind, steering team members standing up for a minute and be recognized. It's important for me to share one little piece about the steering team. This is not a rubber stamp committee. The discussions that we have on a monthly basis with this committee are actually eye-opening and very deep. So they really have our best interest as an institution, as ISU, in mind. Every discussion is not about, let me talk about my little piece. It really is about how can we design the best environment we can. So thank you, steering team members. In terms of the project administration, it does take a village to get this done. And so we have assigned this directive work to several people that are going to be the ones speaking for you today. Starting with Matthew Helm. He's the Assistant Vice President for Administrative Technologies. He is leading, he's the Project Director for the LEAP Initiative. Thank you, Matthew. Business Process Lead is Pam Beach. If you don't mind just standing up and showing them who you are. There you go, Pam Beach. She's the Director for Administrative Technologies eMERGE. We also have Dina Vaughn here today with us, and Dina is actually leading the Student Information Systems piece of this equation, which is huge, so thank you, Dina. Business Intelligence, Beth Ladd is leading that effort. She's the Director of our AIM group. And then Marketing Communications, and really the person responsible for making this happen today, Molly Hartrup. So thank you, Molly, for being here and helping us out. These individuals are going to be standing up and giving you an update, and on the very end, we're going to open up for a lot of questions. So if you don't mind, I'm going to get it started. Matthew?
Okay. Thank you, Andrea. As Andrea mentioned, that this is about an initiative level effort, I suppose we can say, going forward. So what I'm going to talk about is at the initiative level, and then following me will be people that have been involved in the actual, several of the actual projects that have been done thus far. So right now, even in the first year, we've had actually 9 different projects that have kicked off. Some of those have already been completed, but the total work effort that I'm going to talk about today involves 9 different projects. The first one that really kicked it off back in December of 2011, as Andrea mentioned, was the Academic Information Environment Requirements. This was a very important project to get us started in terms of figuring out what the scope of the initiative was going to be, and actually set the tone for business process management and the other things that we did following on all the rest of the projects. This is by far the largest project that we've had thus far. Over 10,200 hours were devoted to that single project, just to get us to where we could get to the RFP project. The next one was the Business Intelligence Prototype Identification Project. That was a project where we sat down and tried to identify what are some high target things that we could do to demonstrate the power of business intelligence. And so out of that, we've identified a couple of projects that we are currently working on. Then the next part is the Academic Information Environment RFP creation. So it was an extension of the first project. We identified the requirements for a new academic information environment, and then we had to write the actual RFP. It was a little bit different than other RFPs that have been written and sent to the state as of late because it is multiple systems that we're looking at. So we could be looking at as many as 12 systems under a single RFP. So we had to do a lot of work to ensure that we had the appropriate number of requirements in there and consulted the appropriate number of people to make that go forward. And then the next one is the Business Intelligence Benchmarks Project. That was one of the business intelligence pilots that were identified earlier. So that is an ongoing project right now that has, I believe, 3 phases that Beth will be talking about a little bit more later. But it's going to show the power of business intelligence to the campus so that we can all get an idea and set expectations of what we can expect moving forward. The next one is going to be a business intelligence tool selection analysis. So we sat down and had town hall meetings, and again, Beth will touch on this a little bit too, to determine what the appropriate tool set is moving forward. We don't have an enterprise-wide business intelligence tool here, but we need to get there in order for a lot of our downstream processes and projects to be successful. Then we also have an RFP that will be produced as part of that, which is a separate project, and that's currently being drafted right now. That will follow on our academic environment RFP to give us all the tool sets that we're going to need to be successful. And then we have a brand new initiative, which we call Operationalizing Enterprise Architecture, which is enterprise architecture is a way of looking at the future and designing where we want to be as an institution, how our systems are going to support the vision of the institution, Educating Illinois, and all the other strategic plans that are available out there. So enterprise architecture is about forming that vision and actually matching technology to that through architectural processes. Well, we haven't done that a lot here, so we've brought in some consultants to help us institutionalize that within our processes so that we can be successful in architecting something that's going to last for a number of years rather than just architecting for today. The last one is the Data Standards and Accountability Project, our newest project that we just kicked off. There's a lot of work that we have to do in order to get us prepared for the implementation of these new systems. We have to look at all the data that's on the current mainframe, and we have to find a home for that. But we want to make sure that that data is as clean as possible and that we understand how much data we're going to bring into a new system and what we're going to do with the data that we don't, and how we're going to archive that over time, and who's responsible for all those data elements. So that's what this project is. It's the project that we're going to be working on over the summer. So as we're waiting for the evaluation process of the RFP to come through, we're going to be working on getting the data ready so that we can hit the ground running once those product selections are made. So this is a group of numbers at the initiative level in terms of what we've done, just to kind of show you the magnitude of what's been accomplished in just the first year of the initiative. So as Andrea mentioned, we've talked to 744 individuals about requirements, about business processes, and so forth. But the total amount's almost 35,000 hours have already been put into this initiative, which is a staggering number considering it's only a year and a few months into it. So it shows you the magnitude of all the people that we've talked to and the amount of effort that's been put in, not only by people in administrative technologies in the technical areas, but a great deal of those hours were put in by functional units, people at the college level, people in administration and functional areas as well. So they've been really dedicated and given us a lot of time to get us this far into the initiative. We've done 400 business and technical requirements. We've also done almost 200 current process maps, 27 business models, 78 use case models, 35 application diagrams, 23 supporting documents. I could not fit a song that would get the last one there. It's just too long. But 1 academic information environment and supporting systems request for proposal. So that's why we abbreviate it, because it's way too long. All right, so as you may be curious about how you know the progress of the initiative as we move forward, because there are so many projects involved. So what we've developed is this graphic, which is our wheel, that shows us the progress of all the different projects and where they fit in. So if you go out to our website, and I know Molly's going to show you our website later on, you'll always see this up on the front page. So at a glance, you can kind of see where we are at and where we still have to go. So you'll notice here that the RFP requirements and their business process management are concluded, and you'll see on the business intelligence side that we have 2 completed and 2 still in progress. So that will be constantly updated every 2 weeks. We put out a new report so that you can kind of see where we're at. Also, if you want to know about individual projects, you can go to the project page on our website, and it will show you the major milestones, and it will check off the ones that we've done, and you'll see the ones that are in progress. So a very easy way to see exactly where we are in terms of that without having to read a large project plan to find out where we're at. In terms of the steering team activities, so Andrew mentioned the steering team earlier, and they've been very active within this process. But there were a few things that we needed them to do to really get us launched into this initiative. The first one is that we sat down and talked about architectural principles, sort of the guiding principles that we're going to use as we make decisions about the systems that we're going to implement and how we're going to use the data going forward. And I'll show you a few of those in a moment, but it was very important to launch us so that we know the framework that we're operating in. The next one was identifying academic drivers. So for everything that we want to do, we want to associate that back to the goals of the university. So it was very important that the steering team helped us to figure out what are the priorities for the university in reference to these particular systems that we're going to implement. Then we have, they've also approved initiative projects and monitored our expenditures and made sure that we're very transparent in terms of what we've done in terms of the expenditures for this project. For this initiative, and establish a framework for decision making. As Andrew mentioned before, not just a rubber stamp, actual decisions are made by this committee. And it's very important that we have that resource that we can go to when we need certain decisions made, and we'll have a lot of those coming up in the next year. I just want to quickly do the top 5 academic drivers. We'll put the whole list on when we put on the website when we put this presentation up. But there are things like attract high-quality students. No, we don't want to attack students. Don't anybody print that. Advance the student experience, attract high-quality faculty and staff, improve access in a timely manner to information, and improve our efficiency. So those were the top 5, although we identified a total of 10 that you'll see online. Also, architectural principles. There are a number that we agreed to, but the ones that I think that are most important that you should know about is the first one is to treat all data as an institutional asset. So this gets rid of the silo problem that Andrew mentioned earlier, where we want to freely share information with appropriate security, but if someone has a need to know that information in an administrative unit, they should be able to have access to that without having to ask for a report to be generated. We've also talked about scalability. To make sure that our systems, that when we have grade reporting coming out, that we have adequate number of systems that we can scale up to make sure that we can respond to the demand for those services. We also talked about high availability, that our systems are redundant and that they can be accessible when we need them to be, but also that we have continuous availability to data. So that doesn't mean that all the systems have to be up all the time, but it means the data has to be available through one or another systems so that we don't get in a situation where we need to contact someone and we can't because our system is down. So we want to make sure that that data availability is there. All right, so I'm going to hand it over to Pam Beach, who's going to talk about the business process management portion of this, which really was the catalyst for that first project that I referred to earlier to get the requirements for the rest of the projects.
Thanks. Good morning, everybody. Nice to see all the red. I didn't do my duty today and wear red. I don't know what I was thinking. My name is Pam Beach. I'm the director of eMERGE, and glad to be here with you today. Can I have a show of hands, because I saw so many familiar faces walking in. The business process management project could not have gotten done without all the people that committed time and effort to come over and sit around the table and tell us what we didn't know, allow us to ask that question, why? So if you could raise your hand if you were involved in process mapping or functional requirements. You can raise both hands if you did more than 5 meetings, because I think there we go. Jess, you can't lift your feet up. Thank you very much. It was very important to all of us, so we appreciate it. eMERGE is about looking at the business need for both the process and the applications. So we serve as a bridge between the business functional units and the actual technical IT. That's our goal. That's what we hope to accomplish. Our project with Leap Forward was titled Business Process Management originally. Kind of got retitled at some way along the way about the SIS requirements gathering. So a little bit of both, but up here you can read what the charge was for us. Basically, we were asked to take a look at all student-related business processes on campus, document them, and then assist in redesigning and streamlining, thinking outside the box, thinking about what we really want to do in the future with the new SIS system. So that's what we were tasked to do. We did a lot of process mapping. We had a lot of people come over and sit around the table and spend a lot of time with us. We created a lot of functional requirements that fed into input into that proposal for a new SIS system. So that's what we were tagged to do, and I'm pleased to say that's what we did. This project is 100% complete. So we started it in January of 2012, and we finished our assignment in December of 2012. So it took us a full year to accomplish the goal. So as we were looking at people and process, we really let the technology fade into the background for our component of this project. We really wanted to talk about what do you need to get the job done? What does the business needs demand of a new student information system? So these are the 9 major process areas that came out to play as we were going through and scoping out the project. Of course, within these 9 major areas, take registrar, for example, there are dozens and dozens of processes that we had to walk through and document, whether it be grade reporting, transcripts, course registration, and the like. And for each of the ones up there, the same can be said. We also had approximately 20 secondary systems that we did the same exact work for, a little bit less in scope, but for library, alumni, parking, disability services, those type of process areas. So we were very busy, as you can tell by all the numbers. Had a lot of workshops, had a lot of cross-functional staff participating, and a lot of open and honest communication. We couldn't have accomplished the goal without people being willing to share their honest opinions on what was going on in the office place, and in some cases, the real heroics of what's going on across campus every single day to get the job done. So 281 SMEs, sorry, there's an acronym on my slide. Those are the subject matter experts. These are all the people here in the room that raised their hands that participated. Obviously, we created a lot of process maps. I'm going to show you a couple of those here coming up next. The current state triggered a lot of conversations about the pain points in them delivering that business with the current state as it is. But we also got to the point where we were able to do some visioning sessions and allow them to think outside the box, that if there weren't restrictions, whether it be technology restrictions, process, people, whatever it may be, if we could take away all those restrictions and all those limitations, how would you really want to do this process in the future with the new SIS? And those visioning sessions led us to the 54 future states, and that allowed us to actually identify requirements that we then passed to Dina for the next stage, so she can make sure that whatever vendors we're looking at, that they'll be able to support the business need with the technology. So this is busy, I know, and I don't know how readable it is up there, but wanted to give you a visual of what a current state process map looks like. This was probably one of the last that we did and spent a lot of time on. This is for continuing students athletics for NCAA eligibility. And if you look at this like you're looking down from the top and you're looking into a swimming pool, it makes it a little bit easier to understand. These are swim lanes running across. And if you go to the far left, your left over there, down the left side, you see all the players, the roles that are involved. We have advising, we have athletics, we have registrar and so forth. These are the swimmers. These are the people that have a stake in this. They have accountability in accomplishing NCAA eligibility. And then all the way through, they have their own swim lane. And so all these little boxes are tasks and activities that must be performed in that order to accomplish the goal at the end for eligibility. So you'll see, kind of looks like Christmas, doesn't it, with red, green, and gold. The red is not good. The red are things that are delays, manual intervention, pain points, things that are frustrating for people as they're going along through the process. But it also allows us to identify bottlenecks, delays, communications, handoffs that have to occur between all the different players down the left side. And in some cases, I think the real value in this is we had instances where people would come into the room They've been doing this for a good 10 to 15 years, and they would mention they've never met the other players face-to-face ever before. They talk to them on the phone, they send them emails all the time, they're highly dependent on them to deliver, but they'd never taken the opportunity to actually sit down, sit down and actually talk to them and realize what the upstream and downstream effects were through this process. So there was a real stepping point, I think, for all of us to become a little bit more aware of the process and our role and how it plays out on people upstream and downstream along the way. So this was the current state. You can see it's very busy. There's a lot going on. This is the future state. Obviously, it's a lot cleaner. It's been streamlined, trying to take advantage of efficient uses of the university resources, whether that's people, time, paper, postage, whatever it may be. But we did design the future state without pain points, so you don't see any red. We don't want to embrace the pain as we move forward. And what we did do on the future state, obviously it's a lot cleaner and would be the optimal of where we want to go. In the top left corner are assumptions that we had to make, so there are a few assumptions that you have to state moving forward to have this actually work and perform for NCAA eligibility in the future of a new SIS. We have to assume some things and we have to list some requirements. And so that's what you see on the map here. So we spent a lot of time and a lot of people's effort went into doing this. And in the end, I think there's a lot of value in doing this type of thing, not only just being process aware, but the collaboration that occurs across these functional units. A lot of people, we spend our time within eMERGE, we ask a lot of times, why? Why do you do that? Can you explain this to me? So we're just asking the questions. They're the ones with all the knowledge. They're the ones with all the information. And there's times when the answer would be, I don't know why I do this, but I do it all the time because I think I'm supposed to. And so we just continue to perpetuate some of the process steps. So future state looks a lot better, obviously. We also spent time going through, when it came closer to creating RFP requirements, we had to create some functional specs out of all the process mapping work that we had done. And we did this through looking at use case diagrams, use case scenarios. This is another sample of that work that went on. This, once again, is combining with our functional experts that are out there working together with the business analysts to be able to provide this type of information. So all in all, it was a really good experience. We got to know a lot of really, really great people and really expanded our knowledge base as well. So I hope we set a really good foundation for what the business needs are of a student information system. And then our job will be to come back around when they actually bring the vendors in and make sure that whatever technology is being proposed actually meets these expectations that were set forth. But along the way, there were some bonuses with what we did and the work that we had. Some of the units actually said, there's some things I could do right now to improve the process. I don't have to wait for a new SIS to do this. So we'd like to share some of those with you. This one is the cashier's office and student accounts implemented a virtual receipt. Now, prior to this, anytime somebody came in and they either wanted to make a payment or maybe they just sent a check in the mail, a paper check, they didn't have the remittance stub, they would have to sit down with a two-piece paper receipt and write down the student UID and write down the amount, process it anytime to make sure that that payment was recorded. Now with the virtual receipt, obviously it's saving cashiers time, money, and I'm really impressed. Within 7 months, they processed over 8,000 virtual receipts. So it was great to see an improvement already done. So good for them. Here's another one with the direct check card. And I talked to Christy West this week. She mentioned that they're piloting this right now. They hope to have it out on My Illinois State in the near future. It'll be another option for students. If they would like to opt in, they could do a direct check for student refunds or for loan reimbursements. It's basically a prepaid, reloadable Visa card used anywhere that Visa is accepted. But it will definitely speed the process of refunds, and it will also reduce paper checks. So. And last is, during one of our process improvements, we had found, we had a financial block out there of $25 for students. We raised that from $25 to $275, and that was done this semester, I believe. Somebody can confirm that, I believe so. What we found out, it was a real timing issue. Students were going out and they were doing their housing deposit. And so as they made a housing reservation, you automatically got a $250 housing deposit go onto your account. Well, the next step for the students is to register for classes. Well, your $250 housing deposit hasn't been processed yet to been billed, to been collected upon and paid, so it looks like that's an overdue amount. Hence, all those students cannot register for classes. Hence, all those calls come into the office of parents and students upset that they can't register for classes. So we've alleviated a lot of frustration and complaints. We hope that they're seeing the results of that right now just by raising that financial minimum threshold. So it was exciting to see the improvements. And that's all I have for this. Next up is Dina.
Thank you, Pam.
Thank you very much.
Okay, so I'm Dina Vaughn, and I am in charge of what we call the ERP, which is Enterprise Resource Planning. Enterprise Resource Planning is really a package of applications. When you go to solicit these vendors, they're going to give you something that's in a package. And so it's not just a specific application that you're looking for. We're looking for kind of a collection, which would be our core for the SIS. Everybody keeps talking about SIS. Something that you can relate an ERP to, it would be like the Microsoft Office suites. It is really a collection of different applications that are cohesive and work very well together. The company has integrated those applications, so there's not a whole lot of error that happens when you're working from one, like Word to Excel to PowerPoint. They really merge well together. So that just kind of gives you an overview of what ERP really is. Between an SIS and the mainframe, I don't know if everyone has actually seen a mainframe screen, but this is what it looks like. It's a keyboard-driven application, so you can go from one screen to another if the functionality exists within systems that we created in-house. So we might have PF keys that will flip you from one system to another, but it's not a point-and-click type of situation. We have taken a lot of the business logic and interfaced it with a front end with My Illinois State. So a lot of that information that you see on My Illinois State, that business logic really resides on the mainframe, okay? So even though we have a web presence, when we're talking about trying to put classes in or trying to put exceptions into other processes, it's all done by these mainframe screens. So there isn't a lot of newer technology, point-and-click type of things that go on with the mainframe. So SIS. SIS is like our core system of how we put a student from applying to the university all the way through graduation and getting their transcript. So it has everything to do with applications, financial aid, registration, degree audit, tuition and fees, student accounts. They all work together, and currently our homegrown systems all work together fairly well. We do have some pain points because when we go to change these applications, it takes quite a while, because if you're looking at like degree audit, which used to be my area, my application, I have different pieces that basically had the same code in it. But the code itself was very large, it was very old, it was hard to try to put new functionality into it. It would take a long time to develop new things into degree audit or change existing things for it. Not thinking about what I need to, but that's okay. So the difference between our SIS and our academic information environment, which is what we call the RFP, is because there's other functionality that the mainframe has within it. How you are able to get your keys, that information is actually keyed into the mainframe. We've written applications. It goes then and interfaces with the key system, so then the people on the key side know what key to actually give you. When you go to get a car on campus, that's another application that we have actually written in-house. Has nothing to do with a student, okay? So we had to identify all the systems that exist on the mainframe, and we have to account for them. So when we go to buy these packages, we want the core SIS, but we also have to be able to interface or figure out how to get something in place that's going to take care of these other systems that we've created in-house, okay? Now, what I'm going to show you next is, a lot of people don't know what an SIS is. So we were able to find on YouTube, because everything's on YouTube nowadays, Ohio University has a great video out there on how they wanted to get their word out about their SIS. The look and feel of it is pretty basic of what most SISs have in them, but I want to preface that because we're seeing it here at this university does not mean that what we create here or what we purchase here will be identical to what you're going to view in this video.
Ohio University's Next Generation Student Information System is all about providing relevant information to the right people at the right time. Online student and faculty centers will consolidate many core services that currently require separate websites or in-person office visits. From the moment a student applies for admission, Student Center provides the information he or she needs to navigate the admissions process. In this example, Noelle can see at a glance that her application for the College of Business is not yet complete. She still needs to submit her high school transcript and her test scores. Once the university receives those items, her application will be complete, and it will be reflected with that status in her Student Center. Current students can conduct important business with the university directly from within Student Center. In Sabrina's case, she can see at a glance that she is registered for 4 classes and that she has a financial hold on her account of $50. She also needs to submit several pieces of documentation to the financial aid office before her spring quarter award can be processed. As a result, she currently owes $3,106. If we look at that balance, we can see that she will only owe $606 once she completes her financial aid checklist. She can pay this amount right from within Student Center. If Sabrina needs to get in touch with her advisor, contact information is available under the Advisor section, or she can send an email without ever leaving Student Center. She simply chooses the person she wishes to notify, types her message, and then clicks Send. Student Center also allows Sabrina to update her personal information. She can change her address, her phone number, and her emergency contact information. In this case, she has her father listed, but she could add an additional person if she needs to. For faculty, PeopleSoft's Faculty Center consolidates common academic and administrative tasks for instructors and advisors, just as Student Center does for students. In this example, Dr. Johnson can see that he has 3 courses assigned to him for spring quarter. If he'd like a quick look at his weekly teaching schedule, he can get one from within Faculty Center. He can see who is registered for his classes in the class roster section, and when it comes time to submit grades, he can access his grade roster as well. If Dr. Johnson has students assigned to him as advisees, he can access their information through the Advisor Center. To learn more about the Next Generation Student Information System and its related projects, visit the Rufus Initiative website at ohio.edu/Rufus.
Okay, so like I said, this is their SIS. We don't know yet what ours is going to look like because we have not selected any vendor products. Now I want to kind of discuss our main project this year was to create the RFP. So we went through a number of different activities, and it all kind of commenced once eMERGE had completed those future state maps that Pam had talked about. So as you see in our timeline here, our progression line, they developed the future state maps, and we actually pulled requirements from those future state maps, and we ensured that we pulled them correctly. We had to change some terminology and language so the vendors could understand what we were talking about and not use ISU terminology. So those requirements were pulled. We were able to work with the functional teams, so those SMEs that everyone stood up or raised their hands, we worked with a lot of them also. We went through a prioritization exercise with them to ensure that we had the requirements that they still needed, and that they identified the steering team's academic drivers and if they how they related to each requirement. We did this process because it is going to be instrumental in when we go to score the vendor responses. We want to make sure that the vendors are giving us the capabilities that we think we need, and we're rating them based on those requirement responses that they're going to give us back. And so we ended up crafting the RFP after we had done that exercise with the functional owners. And we have now released the RFP. It's been out there for about a month. It's due back on April 12th, so the vendors have to give us their responses by then. And we will be starting our evaluation then process, which is now a new project for us. So this kind of, the crafting project was 100% completed when we released the RFP, and now we have another existing project to actually evaluate those responses back. The steering team has been involved in making sure that we have everything in the RFP that was needed. They had to approve it before we were able to release it to procurement and to the state. So everything, we think we did a fairly good job. We got 39 questions back from vendors that we had to answer. I expected quite a bit more than that. So I think we were pretty successful. Along with evaluating the RFP, which is that second line there, the first one was actually getting it out. Then this is kind of our review process and the evaluation timeline. These other arrows below are other activities that we are going to have going on simultaneously. So Matthew talked about the data standards and accountability project. These other activities that we have going on in my area are going to take part of that project. The last thing I want to say is this has been an unbelievable effort by everyone involved. So we had people from all over the university that were instrumental in making sure that the RFP is accurate, and we are really looking forward to seeing what we get back. Thank you. And now Beth is up.
I'm Beth Ladd. I'm the director of, my department is called AIM, that stands for Analysis, Insight, and Management Information. You might be able to guess from the slide up here what it is that I'm concerned with, and that's with the information that's going to come out of all of these systems, as well as the information that comes out, or the data that comes out of some of the existing systems that ISU already has. The area that I work in specifically is called business intelligence. This is a definition of business intelligence, but at the end of the day, what it is taking the information that folks all over this campus are putting into all these systems and figuring how to get it out so that people can report on it, so that people can understand it, consume it, have pictures of it, have conversations about it, and so that we can improve how we do things here at the university, what we do, and so that we're making those decisions based on data. No longer will we have to make decisions based on what we think we know and what we've done in the past, but we'll have real information to make those decisions with. There are lots and lots of different kinds or different areas of business intelligence. So on the left-hand side of this slide, I'm listing lots and lots of different pieces that one could engage in. It's a very large field. We're going to choose to start by focusing in a small area, and so the list on the right-hand side are the places where we're going to focus. We need to focus on reporting, getting some consistent, reliable, repeatable reporting. Dashboards, turning reports into, summarizing those things and turning them into pictures. Nope. Which way did I go? Oops. Giving people the opportunity to be able to query or write or ask questions of data themselves without having to ask someone else to do that for you, if you had an interface or an opportunity to talk to the data yourself. And then finally, to be able to interact with that data. There are lots of examples of what that might look like. These are a few. So it could be reports, it could be pictures, right? It could be tools that you use, whatever they are, to interact with that data. There's lots of different kinds of information. It's not just lists. It could be pictures. It could be a combination of those things. There's lots of possibilities. So how are we going to do that? How are we going to figure out what do we need? How are we going to figure out how to interact with that information? Well, we started by talking to you. So you've heard both Pam and Dina and Matthew talk about all the ways that we've interacted with folks all over campus. So we've spoken to lots of different people. We want to understand what you're doing today. What tools are you using today? What would you like to be using tomorrow? What capabilities would you like to have, ideally? Then we go out to the marketplace and we say, what's out there today? And this is a graph just to give you a sense of how many choices there are out there. This is just a number of vendors that provide business intelligence capabilities. So there are dozens of them out there, and each of these vendors provides some variety of the capabilities that you saw in my big list on that previous slide. So we can't do everything, so we have to find the vendors that do the things that we want to focus on and do them the best. Then we bring those two things together, the things that we want, the things that are available, and then we write an RFP, obviously, to go out and give vendors a chance to respond to those capabilities and tell us what they can and can't do, what the capabilities they can and can't provide are to ISU. All of those things are great, but you have to have not only tools, you also have to have an environment to do that work in. So this is an example of what a business intelligence environment hopefully will grow up to look like. So over on the left-hand side, this represents, the red box represents the areas where folks all over campus are inputting data, all different kinds of systems. Here we have DataTel for financials, we have iPeople for HR. Today we have the mainframe for student, tomorrow we'll have whatever we have, right? And there are lots of other systems like our friends in advancement, our folks in athletics, lots of places where data is collected and input. We have to analyze all those places and decide which parts of those data, select the right pieces to bring over into the blue area and say these are the kinds of information or data that people would want to report on or summarize, just these pieces. And that process needs to be reliable, that process needs to be repeatable, that process needs to be something that happens automatically in sort of that enterprise architecture way, right? So it's a defined, repeatable process. And then we bring over a set of tools on top of that. So the green box represents whatever the tools are that we'll get, and there'll probably be more than one that we'll use to interact with that data, and that folks like you will use to interact with that data. And then that will have a variety of interfaces and looks and feels, from reporting to dashboards to all the other things that we might choose to engage in. So Matthew mentioned earlier that my area has been engaged in doing some work with prototyping. So one of the things we wanted to say was, once we get tools and once we get this environment together, what might the benefits of that look like? Well, it might look like this. It's not very exciting like this, is it? No, not really. But this is what it looks like in my world. This is what the engine looks like under the hood. So we go in and we look at all those systems and we analyze that data and we say, what's there that people want to report on, and how can we rearrange it in a way that makes it easier to get to, easier to understand, easier to write reports or dashboards or whatever on top of. And we do that rearranging. In our world, this is what that rearranging looks like. Then we put a tool on top of it, we put software on top of it, and we give you, the end users, things that you can hopefully quickly understand and engage in, consume, or interact with. So this is one example of what that might look like. In partnership with our friends in PURPA, we've been working with IPEDS Data. So this is data about some retention information from some higher ed institutions here in the state of Illinois. So the grid on the left just lists those out. But the grid on the right, when we add the advantage of geography, perhaps placing those institutions where they actually are in the state, maybe that will tell us something else. Are retention rates better above I-80 than they are below I-80? I don't know, but it's hard for me to see that in this grid. It's easier for me to see that on that picture. Same information, but the context and the method in which you choose to display it can make all the difference in the world about the insight that you're able to get from the information. Another example of that, again, looking at still IPEDS data, we're looking at those same retention rates, but now we've added the element of time rather than geography. So what if we look at those data over the period of many years and say our retention rate's going up or down? Imagine if I could click a box and I could filter and see more lines or less lines, just the ones I want, pick my own selections and decide, do those rates change over time? Do they go up or down? Are we any different than the people that we want to compare ourselves to? I don't know, but I think this is a much easier way to consume that information and really get some insight from it than looking at a table with some numbers. So just a couple of examples of the kinds of things that we've been doing to prototype with real information and real tools, what the future might look like for data and information at ISU. So we've had the discussions with campus units. I put a check mark next to it, but I want to be clear that that's an ongoing conversation. We will be continuing, all of us, to talk to folks and engage with folks and understand who you are, what information you need in order to do your jobs, what you would like it to be tomorrow. What would you like it to look like if all the choices in the world were available to you? We did some town hall sessions in December and January where we asked people to come in and talk to us about what are you doing today? How do you get information or reports or data today? What does that look like? What tools do you use? So we talked to folks. We've gone out and done the vendor analysis that I talked about. So we've looked at all the software that's out there in the market and said, how do those things align with what people have done and what they want to do going forward? We're in the process of writing the RFP then to get a set of tools to help meet those needs. We're working on the prototypes, again, in partnership with our friends in PURPA to begin to demonstrate some of what this could look like when we have an environment and a robust set of tools available to take us forward. We are also doing some analysis and some preliminary design work on the existing systems that are here that aren't going to go anywhere. So DataTel systems and PeopleSoft systems are here, or they have data in them. We need to think about how do we build an environment to begin to give people access to those data when these tools arrive. Then we'll have to go through the process of selecting a vendor once we get all their fantastic responses and begin to install and configure the tool. So those are some of the things we'll be doing going forward into probably summer and fall and into the spring of next year.
Okay, these are some of the places on campus that we have been in the past year trying to be transparent about the Leap Forward initiative. We have tried to reach all of the campus communities, including parents, faculty, staff, students. We want to remain transparent, and that is why we have created and developed our new website. I'm not going to go to the live version of it because we're streaming this live right now, and we don't want it to be slow. It's slow sometimes. We have our projects. As Matthew mentioned, we have the wheel on here. You can go to our projects page. We update that every 2 weeks so that we can remain consistent with all of the project updates. If you would like to become involved, we would love for you to come to our page and find all the ways to get involved. Over on the left-hand side, faculty, staff, students, we have all different things that you can be involved in. If you would like to know more about the background of the Leap Forward initiative, please come here, guys. We keep this updated all the time now so that you can learn more about what we're doing. Resources, any of the resources that you might want to come to find things that have been going on in the news, our blogs that we keep up to date on here. That's where you can find this information. Learn more, so you can learn more about us. And that is it. I'm going to hand it over to Matthew for questions now.
Okay, is there any questions that we can answer for you?
On the RFP side, have you received any responses yet, and how many responses do you expect to receive?
Actually, those all go through procurement, so we don't see them until that time period is ended. So I can't really answer that right now in terms of how many we've actually. We haven't received any yet. Okay, so it sounds like we haven't received any yet, but we have no idea how many we might get because we have so many different products. There are a lot of different vendors that are looking at pieces of that, and that's going to be part of our evaluation process to figure out which vendor is going to be able to take care of which pieces of our architecture. So we would expect to have several respondents, but they may not respond to all the same products. So it may be, we'll probably get, for the larger pieces, somewhere between 2 and 4 of the largest vendors that will take care of a huge chunk of the systems, but then we'll have some specialty ones as well that will handle some of the things that are more unique in the marketplace.
Another question. Yes, ma'am.
So we were talking about specialty vendors and supporting, say, in teacher education, slide test, so would like that already supporting high school be to first to apply, or are you just saying you're on the same basis? You've got no history.
That's a good question. So the question has to do with how do we look at vendors, how do we contact vendors in terms of responses. If they are a current vendor with us, have we contacted them? Well, the way the procurement is these days, we have to be very cautious about how we reach out to vendors. So that's why we have encouraged over the past year any vendors that we work with to maintain a presence on the Illinois Higher Education Procurement Bulletin Board, which is where we post everything. So most of them have their sales managers are all the time looking at that board for other opportunities within the state. So we've used that as our vehicle. Now there may come a time when we look at on April 12th, we see how many vendors, and if there's pieces of the architecture no one responded to, then we'll work with our procurement office to see if we can do a little more advertising of it in terms of the community. But right now, we don't take into account whether we have a current relationship with them in terms of that, because we don't want to create a way that looks like we're biased with the current vendor set. Good question, though. Other questions we can answer?
Given that you have RFPs going to different vendors and you may select different vendors for all the different items that you have, and that vendors have different ways of doing things, how are you going to prevent itself because the system that the vendors come up with may not talk to each other?
Okay, good question. So we're talking about a lot of different vendors potentially with a lot of different systems. So the question is, how do we prevent silos from occurring again? Well, a lot of that has to do with integration, what we call integration layers, where we, not only do we have products, but we have other mechanisms such as Informatica, which is a product that allows us to move data from one system to another and put logic in there to translate that data so that it's more usable. So we'll use technologies like that to integrate these products. Most of the products on the market now from the major vendors already have integration points in them because they're used to working with each other. But some of the requirements that we have within the RFP specifically talk about integration points that these products have to have. They have to have an interface layer that allows us to talk between two different products, for example. So that's how we intend to handle that. The other piece of this, of course, is that we can always say BI will bail us out because when they do the translation of all the data, that's where most people will use that data. So we'll have a lot of entry points for the data, but then we'll use business intelligence products to basically bring that together so that we can use it cohesively. So there's two different strategies that we're going to use there. Did that answer partially? I know. It wasn't a good answer because we don't know what the products are yet. But integration, we have within our technology or our technical requirements, we have a lot of requirements in there that address that particular thing that vendors will have to meet. Anything else? Uh-huh.
If it's determined that certain departments might need to purchase plug-in products, what do you think the timeline would be for determining that?
Okay, so the question is, if there are other products that are going to have to be purchased to interface with these, what would the time frame for that be? We're not quite sure of that yet because we don't know what all the vendor responses are going to look like. But what we're doing is that we're looking at basically timelines that we can put together for what products we're going to sequence first. So that will give you an idea then of what products we're going to have to match with those. It's kind of hard for us to do right now because we don't know how long contracts negotiations would take, and we may miss our window for certain products to move forward first. So we want to make sure that we have those products negotiated, and then we'll set up that timeline, get back with all of our community here at the university to make sure that they understand what our timeline is, and then we can start looking at if there are other products that have to be associated with those.
So I guess my question is, you would notify a department if the RFP, whatever is chosen, wouldn't satisfy their needs and they would need to start looking?
That's correct. So as part, right. So as part of the evaluation process, people who gave us those requirements will be part of that process, so they will see what parts of the requirements those products do and what they don't do. So we'll do a gap analysis for you. And so that way, you already have a heads up of that. It shouldn't be a surprise. And that way we have a chance to see if there's something else that we can do, either through sharing of data or through another third-party product in order to meet that need.
Great, thank you.
There's work happening around defining retention policies for the data from these systems that are going to sunset in the future.
Good question. Did I plant that question with you? No. So that has a lot to do with this project that we're doing over the summer. And part of that is looking at what our retention schedules look like. So the university has published retention schedules, but we need to make sure we understand what does 5 years mean? How do they have to access that data? We have some requirements that are 100 years, that we have to maintain data for 100 years. Well, how do you do that? In what system do you maintain that? So we're going to be looking at those types of questions through this period over the summer so that we already have answers to those before we even start to try to implement any types of products. Because we may have to do archival type of products to meet some of those needs or look at other types of strategies, maybe even things like microfilm when you have to look at preservation things perpetually. So there may be other things that we have to look at. So we have already started to talk to people like legal counsel, going over those retention schedules and starting to understand what that means. But then the next piece of that is what are the technology pieces that we need to look at to make sure that we meet those needs. And there are other pieces of data on the mainframe other than just the applications that we will also have to take care of. There's demographic data that is the basis for a number of applications that we have to make sure gets into those systems as well. So part of that effort is not only the retention and the archival, but how much we bring into the system in the first place versus find another strategy for. Okay, good question. Any other questions?
There's something that we omitted in our presentation. If you would like to view the RFP, it is currently on our website. You just have to have a ULID to be able to log in, and we just don't want it shared outside of the university. But it is out there for anyone within the university to review. And if you have questions, you can email me.
Yeah, and the reason that we say that we don't want it shared outside the university isn't that it's not a public document. It's because the RFP itself has several attachments to it. As we've answered these questions with vendors over time, they need to go get that from the higher ed bulletin site so they can see the full picture of all the questions that we've answered. And you won't see that within the original draft of the RFP. So that's the reason why we want to do that, is to make sure that they get a complete picture of the questions that have already been answered for the RFP. Sir?
I just have a comment and then a commendation. I'm Larry Dietz, Vice President for Student Affairs, and my comment, if you want to blame someone for all of this process that you're involved with, you can blame me perhaps, because at my two previous institutions, when I joined them, each of those places said, well, we need to go through this process and get new technology to drive all of our processes. So it comes at some point in institutions' history and future. One of those institutions decided to do a 4-campus shift and purchased a product and did a lot of upfront process re-engineering. That integration was very successful. You're never really completely through anything, but they're as close to being through a process as most places. And I really want to say a commendation about how that approach has worked here. As much as you can do up front, getting people together and addressing issues, your end product is really always going to be better. The second institution that I joined decided not to do that, and really basically all you're doing then is making sometimes old policies or old practices that are not terribly effective or efficient faster. So that's not really a good way to do business. So that's the comment. My commendation is really to the team here, to all of you. I know I speak for all the vice presidents when I say thanks for what you've done up to this point. We're not anywhere near close to being done with all of this, but thanks for this team approach. It really means a lot to us that you're putting time and energy in this, and that you're working with each other, perhaps getting to know each other in different kinds of ways. That team approach is always going to be the better approach, and the result will be a better product. So thanks for all that you've done on all of this to date, and all that you'll do in the future. So thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Dietz. Anything else before we wrap up? Sure.
Are those timelines on the website?
The timelines that we just showed you earlier? Oh, yeah, they're on the website. So actually, the complete presentation will be on the website, and we'll actually add additional slides that we didn't have time to get through today to give you more context. So those will be online, plus the presentation itself will be stored online. Any other questions before we close? Okay, well, I want to thank all of you for coming today. I want to thank Dr. Dietz for his time and for his comments, and the steering team members for joining us today and for their work on the project, and all of you that have contributed to this. And I want to thank UMC also for videotaping today and providing the capability for us to stream this live to individuals and put this on for those that couldn't attend today. So thanks a lot, and I encourage you to participate as much as you can in the process over the next 3 or so years. Thank you. Have a good day.